I still remember that evening like it was yesterday. The fancy restaurant, the golden anniversary decorations, over 50 relatives gathered to celebrate my parents, and me sitting at the corner of the table, invisible as always. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody even looked my way. Then my older brother Derek stood up, raised his glass, and called me the family failure in front of everyone. The room laughed. My parents laughed. But I just smiled, pulled out my phone, and everything changed forever. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. This story might hit close to home. Stay with me, because what happened next shocked everyone in that room. Growing up in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, my family looked perfect from the outside. A nice house with a white fence, 2 cars in the driveway, and 3 kids playing in the backyard. My father Raymond worked as a construction engineer. He was the kind of man who measured success by trophies, promotions, and achievements you could hang on a wall. My mother Patricia stayed home to raise us. She was loving in her own way, but her attention was always divided, and somehow I always got the smallest piece. Then there was Derek, my older brother. 4 years older than me, he was everything my father wanted in a son. Star quarterback in high school, popular with everyone, the kind of guy who walked into a room and owned it. My younger sister Madeline came 3 years after me. She had our mother wrapped around her finger from the day she was born. Beautiful, charming, always the center of attention at every family gathering. And then there was me, Archer, the middle child, the quiet one, the one who somehow got lost in the shuffle between the golden son and the princess daughter. I was not athletic like Derek. I could not charm a room like Madeline. I was the kid who preferred books over baseball, who taught himself to code on an old computer at 12 years old, who spent Friday nights learning about stock markets while other kids went to parties. My bedroom was in the basement, a small room next to the water heater, while Derek and Madeline had spacious rooms upstairs with windows facing the street. Every dinner was the same. Dad would ask Derek about his football practice, praising every touchdown, every win. Mom would ask Madeline about her dance recitals, her friends, her latest accomplishments. And me, I would sit there pushing peas around my plate, waiting for someone to ask about my day. They never did. The moments that hurt the most were the ones that should have been celebrations. When I was 10 years old, I won first place in the state math competition. It was the biggest achievement of my young life. I remember standing on that stage, holding my trophy, scanning the audience for my parents. They were not there. They had taken Derek to his football championship game 200 miles away. When I got home that night, trophy in hand, my father glanced at it and said, "That is nice, son." Then he turned back to the television to watch the game highlights. At 13, I built my first website from scratch. I was so proud, so excited to show my father what I had created. I pulled him over to the computer, my heart pounding with anticipation. He looked at the screen for maybe 3 seconds, nodded, and said, "That is nice." Those same 2 words. Then he walked away to help Derek with his college applications. But the memory that still stings the most happened when I turned 15. My birthday fell on the same day as Madeline's junior beauty pageant. I woke up that morning expecting the usual birthday breakfast, the pancakes with candles that Mom made for Derek and Madeline every year. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to Madeline's pageant. There is cereal in the cabinet. Happy birthday." That was it. No cake, no candles, no family singing around the table. That night, after everyone came home buzzing about Madeline's second-place finish, I walked to the grocery store alone. I bought myself a small chocolate cake with my allowance money. I carried it down to my basement room, stuck a single candle in the center, and sang happy birthday to myself in the darkness. I was 15 years old, and I had never felt more alone in my life. After that birthday, something shifted inside me. I stopped expecting anything from them. I stopped hoping for attention, for recognition, for love that seemed reserved only for my siblings. Instead, I poured everything into my books, my computer, my dreams of a different future. I started reading about investing, about building wealth, about creating something from nothing. I found a quote in one of those books that changed my perspective forever. The quietest person in the room often has the loudest mind. I read that sentence over and over until it became my mantra. If my family refused to see me, I would build something so big that one day they would have no choice but to notice. My high school graduation should have been a proud moment. I finished with the highest grades in my class valedictorian, with a full scholarship to a university in California. But my parents did not attend the ceremony. That same week, Derek had received a job offer at a prestigious company. They threw him a party instead. I walked across that stage alone, accepted my diploma, and made a decision. I would leave Ohio and never look back. The day I left for California, nobody drove me to the airport. I took a taxi with $500 in my pocket and a used laptop in my backpack. Derek's only words to me were, "Good luck, I guess." My mother hugged me briefly, already distracted by something Madeline was saying. My father shook my hand like I was a stranger he had just met at a business conference. On that flight, watching Ohio disappear beneath the clouds, I made myself a promise. I would never ask my family for a single dollar. Whatever I built, whatever I became, it would be entirely my own. College was hard. I worked 2 jobs while maintaining my grades. I coded websites for local businesses, at night tutored students in math during weekends, and saved every penny I could. While other students went on spring break trips, I stayed in my tiny dorm room working on freelance projects. While they bought new clothes and ate at restaurants, I wore the same 3 shirts and survived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. But I was also learning. Every spare moment went into studying the stock market, analyzing companies, understanding how money really worked. I opened my first investment account with just $200. I made mistakes. I lost money. But I also learned from every failure, adjusted my strategy, and kept going. At 22, I graduated with a degree in computer science and landed a job at a growing tech company. The salary was decent, but more importantly, it gave me capital to invest. While my coworkers bought fancy apartments and expensive cars, I rented a tiny studio apartment and drove an old Honda with over 150,000 miles on it. Every extra dollar went straight into my investment accounts. By 25, my portfolio had grown to $100,000. By 27, I had saved enough to start my own software company. It was small at first, just me and 2 other developers working out of a cramped office space. But we had a good product, and slowly clients started finding us. Through all of this, I went home for Thanksgiving every year. I am not sure why I kept going back. Maybe some part of me still hoped things would change. Maybe I wanted to prove something. Or maybe I just could not fully let go of the family that had let go of me so long ago. Every visit was the same. Derek would brag about his latest promotion. He had joined my father's construction company and was working his way up the ladder. $80,000 a year, company car, corner office. My parents beamed with pride every time he spoke. Madeline had married a wealthy real estate developer named Bradley. They lived in a mansion with 6 bedrooms and a swimming pool. My mother kept photos of their wedding all over the house, talked about Madeline's perfect life to anyone who would listen. And when they asked about me, which was rare, I would tell them about my company. My father's response never changed. "So you still cannot find a real job?" My mother would add, "When are you going to settle down and get a stable career like your brother?" I learned to just nod and change the subject. By 29, my company had grown to 15 employees and was generating $2 million in annual revenue. By 30, I sold a portion of the business to an investor. Combined with my investments in real estate and the stock market, my personal portfolio had crossed $3 million. I was by any objective measure financially successful. But to my family, I was still the failure. Still the middle child who could not find a real job. Still the invisible one who did not deserve attention or recognition. My 30th birthday came and went without a single call from my family. Not from my parents, not from Derek, not from Madeline. I spent that day alone in my apartment, and I would be lying if I said it did not hurt. 30 years old, and my own family could not remember my birthday. That same week, Derek bought a new house. $400,000, 4 bedrooms, in a nice neighborhood close to my parents. Of course there was a party. Of course I was invited. And of course when I showed up, I sat in the corner while everyone congratulated Derek on his success. At one point during that party, an uncle I barely knew asked me what I was doing with my life. Before I could answer, Derek jumped in. "Archer is still figuring things out," he said with a smirk. "You know how it is. Some people just take longer to find their path." Everyone laughed. I smiled politely and excused myself to get another drink. Driving home that night, I realized something important. No matter how successful I became, my family would never see it. They had decided who I was 30 years ago, and they were not interested in updating their perception. If I wanted them to see me, truly see me, I would have to force them to look. The invitation to my parents' 40th wedding anniversary arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon. A fancy card with gold lettering requesting my presence at an upscale restaurant downtown. Over 50 guests expected. Formal attire required. I almost threw it away. But something made me hold on to it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that stubborn hope I could never quite extinguish. Or maybe deep down, I knew this would be the moment everything changed. The night of the party, I put on my best suit and drove to the restaurant. When I arrived, Derek was already holding court near the entrance greeting guests like he was the host of the evening. Madeline was directing the catering staff, making sure every detail was perfect. And my parents sat at the head table accepting congratulations from relatives I barely recognized. Nobody greeted me when I walked in. I found my assigned seat at the far end of the table right next to the kitchen doors. The same spot I always occupied at family gatherings. The spot reserved for someone they wanted present but not noticed. The evening proceeded as expected. Stories about my parents' early years together. Toasts to their love and commitment. Photos projected on a screen showing 4 decades of memories. I noticed that I appeared in maybe 3 of those photos, always in the background, always partially obscured by Derek or Madeline. Then came the speeches. Derek stood up first, confident as always, champagne glass in hand. He talked about what wonderful parents Raymond and Patricia had been. How they had supported him through football, through college, through his career. He talked about Madeline, about what a beautiful family they had raised. He talked for nearly 10 minutes. He did not mention my name once. After the applause died down, an older uncle named Gerald turned to my direction. "So, what about Archer?" he asked loudly enough for the whole table to hear. "What is he up to these days?" Derek's response came quick, accompanied by that familiar smirk. "Oh, Archer, he is still figuring out his life. You know the family failure." The table erupted in laughter. 50 people, including my own parents, laughing at me. My mother added her own commentary. "We keep hoping he will find a real job someday." More laughter. My father nodded gravely. "Not everyone can be successful. Someone has to be the ordinary one in the family." I sat there, fingers wrapped tight around my water glass, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation. But this time, something was different. This time, I was not the scared kid hoping for acceptance. I was a 32-year-old man who had built an empire in silence, and I had proof in my pocket. I set down my glass and stood up slowly. The laughter faded as everyone turned to look at me. The invisible child was making himself visible, and nobody knew quite how to react. "Since we are sharing," I said, keeping my voice calm and steady, "maybe I should share something too." I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. I opened the wealth management app I use to track all my assets and handed the phone to Uncle Gerald. His eyes went wide as he looked at the screen. Total net worth displayed clearly in bold numbers, $4.7 million. Uncle Gerald's jaw dropped. He passed the phone to the person next to him, who had a similar reaction. The phone traveled around the table like a hot potato, each person's expression shifting from curiosity to shock to disbelief. When it reached Derek, his face went pale. The smirk vanished completely, replaced by something that looked like a mixture of confusion and fear. He stared at the screen for a long time before passing it to my father. My father grabbed the phone, studied the numbers, then looked up at me. For the first time in 30 years, he truly looked at me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. The room had gone completely silent. 50 people frozen in place processing what they had just witnessed. I walked over and gently took the phone back from my father's hands. Then I turned to face the entire table. For 30 years, I was invisible to all of you. I was the child you forgot to pick up from school, the birthday you never remembered, the graduation you never attended. I paused, letting the words sink in. But I never asked any of you for anything. Not a dollar, not a favor, not even your attention. I built everything on my own. Not because I wanted to prove you wrong, but because I had to prove to myself that I was worth something. I looked directly at my parents. Tonight you called me a failure in front of everyone. But the truth is, I have not been a failure for a very long time. You just never cared enough to notice. The silence was deafening. My mother had tears streaming down her face. My father looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 2 minutes. Derek stared at his plate, unable to meet my eyes. I am not sharing this to shame you, I continued. I am sharing this so you finally see me, for the first time in 30 years. I put the phone back in my pocket, nodded politely to the stunned guests, and walked out of the restaurant. Nobody followed me. Nobody said a word. I drove to my hotel that night in complete silence. No radio, no phone calls, just the sound of the engine and my own thoughts. When I got to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed in the darkness for a long time. And then, for the first time since that lonely 15th birthday, I cried. Not from pain or sadness, but from release. 30 years of being invisible, and I had finally set myself free. The weeks following that dinner were strange. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from family members I had barely spoken to in years. Derek sent a text apologizing, though the words felt hollow and rehearsed. Madeline called crying, claiming she had no idea I felt so alone. My mother sent long messages filled with regret, saying she had always loved me but did not know how to show it. My father sent a single email. 3 words. We need to talk. I did not respond to any of them right away. I needed time. 30 years of pain does not heal with a few apologetic text messages. Instead, I focused on myself. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. In our sessions, I learned to confront the wounded child inside me, the boy who just wanted his parents to notice him. I learned that my worth was never dependent on their attention, that their failure to see me was their limitation, not mine. I reconnected with friends who had been there for me when family was not. My best friend Marcus, who I had met during my early startup days, reminded me of something important during one of our conversations. You do not owe them forgiveness, he said, but you owe yourself peace. Those words stayed with me. I started journaling, writing down painful memories, and then consciously releasing them. I poured energy into my work, into relationships that nurtured me, into building a life that had nothing to do with proving anything to anyone. 6 months passed. The anger faded. The hurt softened around the edges. I was not healed completely, but I was healing. And that was enough. Eventually, I agreed to meet my parents. We sat at a quiet coffee shop, neutral territory, just the 3 of us. There were no hugs, no dramatic reunions, just a calm, honest conversation that was long overdue. I told them everything. How invisible I had felt growing up. How their neglect had shaped me in ways both painful and powerful. How I had built my success not out of spite, but out of a desperate need to prove my own value. For the first time in my life, my father apologized. Not a dismissive sorry, but a genuine acknowledgement of his failures. I failed you as a father. he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I do not expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I see it now." My mother held my hand across the table, tears in her eyes. She did not make excuses. She just said she was sorry, and that she loved me, had always loved me, even when she did a terrible job of showing it. I did not promise that everything would go back to normal. There was no normal to go back to. But I told them I was willing to try, to build something new. Not the family we were, but maybe something better. The journey is ongoing. My relationship with Derek remains distant, though he has made efforts to reach out. Madeline and I talk occasionally, and there is a warmth there that was never present before. My parents and I see each other more often now, and our conversations feel different. Genuine. Like they are finally seeing the person I have become, rather than the invisible child they remember. But the most important relationship I rebuilt was with myself. I learned that I did not need their validation to be valuable. I learned that the quiet kid in the basement, the one who taught himself to code and dreamed of something bigger, was worthy of love all along. If you are the invisible one in your family, hear me clearly. You do not need their permission to be successful. You do not need their attention to be worthy. Your value is not determined by how much space you take up at the dinner table or how many photos you appear in. Build your life. Build it quietly if you have to. Build it in the basement, in the margins, in the spaces they never thought to look. And one day when you are ready, you will step into the light on your own terms. And if they finally see you, that is a bonus. But even if they never do, you will still be enough, because you always were. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? How did you overcome it? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing right now. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about overcoming life's challenges and finding your own path. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community. I hope this story reminded you of something important. You are seen, you are valued, and you are never as alone as you might feel. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.